Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Shumla's May Lunch and Learn. I'm Carrie Kuamura. I'm the executive director at Shumla, and I'm really excited to introduce this next speaker to you all. Today, I have the honor of introducing you to Dr. Nancy Kenmotsu, and she serves on our board of directors, but she also brings more than 40 years of archaeological experience to the table. So Nancy has held leadership roles with both the Texas Historical Commission and TxDOT, and she authored numerous publications and is deeply respected throughout the archaeology community in Texas and beyond. And one of the things I appreciate most about getting to know Nancy over the past 6 months to a year through Shumla is the incredible depth of knowledge and perspective she brings to every conversation. It was really cool to go through this roll backwards and hear her say these incredible little things and then Google her and then see her picture up there and then all of the things she's done. It's just incredible to learn about Nancy that way. So I'm really excited to present and introduce this next speaker to you because she also co-authored a major ethnohistoric literature review of the Lower Pecos that helped synthesize what we know about many indigenous groups connected to this region. Her experience throughout the field made her an invaluable part of the National Historic Landmark nomination process, and we're really lucky to have her serving on Shumla's board today. So please help me in enthusiastically welcoming Dr. Nancy Kenmotsu.
Well, hello and welcome. This is Nancy. I'm signing in from Portland, Oregon. But not to fear, I know something about Texas. I spent the majority of my career in Texas. It was a state where I initially planned to stay for only 7 years, get my PhD, and go elsewhere. But I stayed for 30 years. Texas really became home. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to view and study many places, and the people who had, or some that still do, call those places home. One of those places was the Lower Pecos region. The sites in the region with cultural deposits often have very deep and thick middens. They're from the intermittent hunter-gatherer occupations over literally thousands of years. And when you combine that with the remarkable painted shelters, well, it drew me to the Canyonlands from the first time I saw it in 1988. And how was I privileged to develop this NHL or landmark or National Historic Landmark? I had known of Shumla since its inception, but my focus tended to be elsewhere. Then in 2015, I signed up for a 10-day tour of Mayan and Proto-Mayan sites in the southern Mayan lowlands of Mexico. Fabulous, a busman's holiday. Afterward, I flew to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport to wait for my flight to Seattle. My cell phone went on. It was Carolyn Boyd, then Shumla's executive director and Shumla's founder. We chatted, and then she stunned me by asking, how would you like to contract with Shumla to prepare an NHL nomination for selected sites in the Lower Pecos? I was really stunned. So I blurted out, what? No, Carolyn, I would not like to. I would love to do this. I had just come from Maya land with its fantastic archaeological and cultural splendor. But for me, the sites of the Lower Pecos Canyonland are really of equal consequence. I said I would speak with Dwayne Peter, my boss at Versar, where I was working part-time. And when I spoke with him, he chuckled, saying, well, I've already spoken with Carolyn, and you should go for it. Within 6 weeks, the contract was signed, and my labor of love began. I'll add that some archaeologists may have wondered why I was chosen. I'd never prepared an NHL nomination, but with respect, I can say that I know of only two professional archaeologists in Texas who had done an NHL nomination, and they have both passed away. I had, however, researched and in some cases done fieldwork on and written about 20 or 30 successful National Register and State Register nominations. Here's a few. NR nominations, National Register nominations, do not require the rigor or the high bar that exists for an NHL, but the nominations and the process are in the same family. I've also successfully defended NHL properties threatened by proposed projects and highways, including the King Ranch near Corpus Christi. Nonetheless, doing this NHL was an opportunity that I could not pass. Before we begin, for those who are not archaeologists, a few definitions of jargon I will use. Also, I want to say that all the photographs in this presentation are of sites included in the NHL. It's not to say these are the only wonderful sites down there. It's just that I wanted to highlight those that are in the nomination. Another point, I've changed a few chronological assumptions that are in the NHL. That is, in 2017, when we submitted the final nomination, the time frame of the Pecos River style art was thought to have endured for about 3,000 years. Today, research has shown that it persisted for 4,000 years, beginning about 4,500 BC. So I wanted to update that so that you're not hearing one thing when you talk to someone else and hear what I gave as a different figure. Now let's look at what we're going to be talking about. In creation, we're going to focus on the place and Shumla's mission. Why did you create an NHL and who are the partners? Go on to research about what I did to research and how the sites were selected, and then a couple of minutes on National Park Service requirements and the challenges thereof. Significance, the most important part of a National Historic Landmark is what they call the significance statement. It's upfront in the very beginning, and it's sort of a summary of what you're going to say later on. And I think what happens is that in the NHL division, if they get a significance statement that they think does not do the trick, they don't go any further. They just reject them. And then finally, waiting for Godot. Creation really begins with the place. And that is the lower Pecos Canyonlands in this case. For those that have not been to prior lunch and learns, I'm going to give a very brief review. The lower Pecos Canyonlands are largely confined to Val Verde County, Texas. The canyons formed, of course, eons ago through the incising action of the waters of three rivers, the Rio Grande, the Pecos River, and the Devil's River. As a note, a number of the sites today claim the name cave. These are not true caves. Most are rock shelters, but this is the common name, so we're going to keep with that. By 12,000 years ago, and possibly earlier, Native Americans, both in Texas and in the Mexican state of Coahuila, began occupying these shelters. leaving the residue of their daily lives that over time resulted in the buildup of very thick deposits with abundant cultural materials called middens. These materials include items that are rarely preserved in archaeological deposits. They were preserved by the climate and the dry caves and offer remarkable insights into the daily lives of the people over thousands of years of occupation. Around 5,000 years ago, these people began to paint murals in some shelters, a tradition that endured for 4,000 years. There are actually 5 rock art styles across the region. Only the Pecos River style is featured in the NHL. The others are also important and sometimes found in sites with Pecos River style, but they are not yet well studied. The NHL also only focuses on sites in Texas. The cultural region, of course, extends south of the Rio Grande, but again, few systematic survey or other efforts to identify and record them have been undertaken. Within Val Verde County, about 300 sites are known to contain this art style. So this is the place. And the place is where Shumla concentrates its efforts. Its mission, as you can see here, is to preserve the oldest known books in North America. In Shumla's work to date, they have stayed true to their preservation ethic, and they have accomplished it through the 4 prongs of documentation, research, stewardship, and, importantly, education. Over its nearly 3 decades, Shumla has become well respected professionally worldwide. Why create an NHL? Well, I'll begin with this. I want to stress that every person I worked with, spoke with, talked to on this project believed with no hesitation that these sites are of national significance and these sites need to be recognized. That's the first part of the why. The second part is that most Texans, most people in northern Coahuila, most Americans, and the world don't even know they exist. That status is simply not sustainable. It's not because the art is fading slowly, but it is fading. One day, most will be gone. Because another reason is because looting of the deposits and even sometimes the art is impacting these treasures. Looters often justify their activity by saying, no one's paying any attention to these sites, so they're not important to anybody but me. Not true. Most sites are on large private ranches, and the owners are excellent stewards. However, they cannot police every acre every day. So before I was contracted, a core group of partners convened meetings to discuss what vehicle would aid in educating the public about these extraordinary gems, discourage looting, and bring the region's significance to light. Their decision: creating a national historic landmark district. And that decision brings in the federal government, specifically the National Park Service. This agency manages 2 programs to document and acknowledge the historical significance of properties deemed worthy of preservation. The first is the National Register of Historic Places, often called just National Register or even NR. It is, in their words, the official list of places that have gone through the registration process and been approved by the keeper of the register. There's actually a person in DC who has that title, has been approved at the local, state, or national level of significance. The current number of sites, buildings, structures, objects, and districts in the National Register is just above 93,300. It grows by about 1,000 each year. And 3 of the districts are in Val Verde County. They are the Lower Pecos Canyon District, the Mile Canyon, or sometimes it's called Eagle Nest Canyon District, and Seminole Canyon District. One site, Rattlesnake Canyon, is also with this group. All were listed in 70 and 71 at the national level of significance. The second program is the National Historic Landmark. These are properties that illustrate the heritage of the United States, and they are recognized for their outstanding historical significance to the nation. The final approval of all NHLs is the Secretary of Interior. And you can see there aren't nearly as many NHLs, 2,900, but most reflect the built environment after AD 1600. Only 3% are thought to be archaeological. The NHLs in Texas currently number 50, and our archaeological district was the 50th. The partners believed the NHL designation would publicly highlight the value of the sites and discourage looting. This is not looting, these are real excavations that went on at Kuntil Spit. One of the things I learned about Texas when I was there is that its people are very protective of their collective history, and they should be. So if the Texas Historical Commission, effectively the state's keeper of the register, and the Secretary of Interior both say a property has great historic value, Texans will do all they can to preserve that property. Only time is going to tell. But I have faith in Texans, and I anticipate an increase in the preservation ethic here and in Mexico. I could not resist this photo. Shumla spearheaded the nomination process, and my contract was with Shumla. Jessica Hamlin, then Shumla's executive director, skillfully managed the contract, and chaired all meetings. Elton Pruitt, Shumla board member, and Carolyn Boyd, now an endowed professor at Texas State, also represented Shumla. So here's the other list of the partners. Parks and Wildlife contributed funds and were involved in every step, every meeting, every decision. Dr. Michael Strutt and Tim Robert, TPWD's representatives. The National Park Service manages Amistad National Recreation Area and Reservoir. Jack Johnson, Cultural Resource Manager for them, he represented NPS. He also participated in everything that we did. Some sites within both the recreation area and in TPWD's management are listed in the NHL. Another partner was the Texas Historical Commission. Tiffany Osborne, the deputy state archaeologist, represents the THC. A number of NHL sites are privately owned. Shumla made extensive outreach to ensure landowners of privately owned sites were being considered for inclusion in the nomination knew of our efforts. Any landowner who objected to sites being included was immediately thanked and the sites were removed. Jack and Missy Harrington, Jack Skiles and his family, and other landowners were and are partners and offered their perspectives and support of the nomination. The other aspect of creation is the heart of this NHL. Some of you may have seen or read Carolyn's book on the White Shaman mural, one of the sites in the NHL. In the book, Carolyn convincingly explains that the art is not the result of random visits to the shelter. Rather, it was created as a single event to tell the birth of the sun and the beginning of time. Thus, it is a creation narrative, and it represents a book. The mural tells the story of the cosmos of the people who lived in this place. At the end of the book, she writes, in the lower Pecos, the deposits of cultural remains engender images of simple foragers engaging simple tools in an often harsh and unforgiving landscape. Without the art, they are yet another little understood and little regarded archaic population eking out a meager existence as best they could. But with the art, worlds change, wonder begins. The partners had, earlier before I came on, identified about 70 candidate sites across county. All partners were knowledgeable about the sites, but no one knew every site well. I confess at the outset, I thought I had a decent understanding of the Lower Pecos. Well, that was trashed probably in the first week. Everyone needed data on each site. We needed the same level of information about each site. So sites were divided into geographical subareas, and this is the western subarea. Standardized reports for each subarea were prepared with brief overviews of the subarea, a discussion of each site, who worked at it, when, and what their conclusions were. The reports also provided my thoughts on the pros and cons for inclusion in the NHL, and the partners reviewed that and offered their own opinions, which I was grateful for. The partners then decided which sites stay, which sites are dropped, and which need field checking. My first 10 months of work were devoted to researching each of the 70 sites. I loved every minute. The effort included 4 trips to Texas for research at UT Austin's Texas Archeological Research Center, UTSA, and Shumla, 3 field visits, and sitting at a solemn table in the conference room of the Bank of Del Rio with the partners to reach agreement on the sites for the district. Ultimately, 35 sites were selected. And here shows the ones in the west. Those in the Eagle Nest Canyon concentration are also on the west side, but they make almost a sub-district within it. And here are the ones on the eastern side. Here is a map on the left of the district's 35 sites. As you can see, they're largely discontiguous. They spread across an area some 50 miles east-west and 37 miles east, north-south. We could not draw a boundary that large. So nearly all sites are bound by the edge of their cultural materials. All are located in rock shelters or on terraces of the Rio Grande, Pecos, and Devil's Rivers, or their tributaries. The sites consist of 33 rock shelters and overhangs, one sinkhole feature, and one terrace site. Four of the sites, Arenosa, Devil's Mouth, Baker Cave, and Seminole Sink, were extensively excavated between 1960 and 1985. Their remaining deposits destroyed by looting, or, in the case of Seminole Sink, completely excavated. For the next few minutes, I'm going to highlight 5 representative sites in the district, beginning with Arenosa, VV 99. Located in a rock shelter close to the mouth of the Pecos, this picture illustrates the deposits left by humans repeatedly overlain by silt and sand from the abrupt, often violent floods in the region. Arenosa is an outstanding site. Its 32 radiocarbon dates illustrate a nearly unbroken span from 4,350 BC to AD 650. The manner in which it was excavated took advantage of all the best possible available practices of the 1960s. Great care was taken in the screening and collection of materials and records. Those collections, containing in excess of 500,000 specimens, represent an unparalleled opportunity to investigate many aspects of the lifeways in the lower Pecos. Fake Bell, VV74, is one of several NHL sites in Seminole Canyon. The site is arguably one of the most well-known sites in the lower Pecos, famous for not only its pictographs, but also for the depth and extent of the prehistoric cultural deposits. In the early 20th century, archaeologists and museum curators were attracted to this and other rock shelters in the region, seeking well-preserved, perishable artifacts. TPWD today offers guided tours of this and other sites in its state park. Rattlesnake Canyon, owned by Texas Tech, contains Pecos River pictographs across its back wall and extending 18 feet high onto the ceiling. The lowest portions of the mural are being impacted by the repeated floods, but the upper portions of all of the area at Rattlesnake Canyon, those are in fair condition. Those figures include 98 anthropomorphs, 17 with rabbit ears on their heads, a trait usually found west of the Pecos. 21 anthropomorphs are winged, 4 impaled by spears. Jean Clos, a world-renowned rock art specialist from France, considers Rattlesnake to be the most significant rock art site in the lower Pecos. Today, Amanda Castaneda is currently leading Shumla's archaeological team in an effort to thoroughly document and analyze the art in Rattlesnake. Bonfire Shelter is a short walk upstream from the Rio Grande. It sits at the base of a limestone cliff. Local oral history held that the burned bones visible on the top of the mitten were cows the Skiles family had burned and buried. In 1962, the family allowed high school student Mike Collins to dig a small pit at the site, proving that the bones were bison, not cow, and the age of the upper deposit was the late Archaic. Subsequent excavation show three distinct stratigraphically separated bone beds. I'll only speak of the highest. Bone bed 3 had a very dense layer of burned modern bison bone from three separate Bison Drive events. Where this bone was tightly packed, it was intensely burned. Dave Dibble concluded the fire was due to a natural combustion of decaying animals. The three drive events represented by Bonebed 3 are exceptional. Each event had to be enormously important to the people of Eagle Nest Canyon and others well beyond. Bison rarely ventured into the lower Pecos Canyonlands. Their arrival would have been viewed by the people as significant. The drives, producing copious food and hides, had to be events chronicled in oral history for centuries. It is also likely that feasting and rituals followed each event. The smoke and the stench from the burning would have been seen as well as smelled from great distance, making for tales that could be told in succeeding generations. Turning east, the final example I'll give is a remarkable shelter in the Devil's River drainage. This is Mystic Shelter, VV 612. Mystic is actually three shelters, tiered one above the other. The middle shelter contains most of the art. The Pecos River art in this panel contains more than 40 anthropomorphs. Significantly, the panel also has a horned serpent, something hinted at in panels at other sites where relatively thick, wavy lines move across the panel. But at Mystic, the left end of the red waving line has a head and horns. I sort of circled it. Horned serpents are found in rock art elsewhere, including in the Jornada region around El Paso. However, horned serpents in the Jornada date from AD 200 to 1000. At Mystic, the art dates to 2500 BC, well before the appearance of these serpents in the Jornada region. Carolyn, Miles Miller, and others have argued the similarity in cross-cultural patterns of symbolic expressions among the Jornada, Maya, Aztec, and Lower Pecos cultures suggest deep origins in time. So Mystic's haunting horned serpent concludes my review of the selected sites in the landmark. Back to the 21st century. The National Park Service has a dominant role in all NHLs. It should, as it's the ultimate approval for any landmark, is the signature of their Secretary of Interior. So their rules govern the process. And for the most part, I found the rules are what you would expect. They require a clear, strong national significance statement and demonstration of that significance. However, given that the vast bulk of NHLs are historic age buildings and structures, there exist challenges for archaeological nominations. the three I encountered you see here: buildings versus sites, integrity versus provenience, and discontiguous. So, in building the sites, the NHL rules provide 6 criteria. All National Historic Landmarks, without exception, must meet one or more of these criteria at the national level of significance. Most, as you can see, were written to elicit information needed to evaluate landmarks for buildings and structures. I mean, location associated with a famous person, outstanding illustration of a broad theme in American history, and glory at the bottom. The final criterion was clearly added for archaeology. And it reads pretty clearly in this format. However, here's the full text. I'll let you look at it. It's a mouthful, clearly trying to cover every type of archaeological site, from slave quarters at Jefferson's plantation to Poverty Point to Paleo-Indian sites and everything in between. My eyes crossed when I first read it. But after reading it a dozen times or so, I finally broke apart the individual pieces. And then I found how our significance statement was able to demonstrate that the Lower Pecos Canyonlands district has yielded and is going to yield in the future information of major scientific importance. Integrity versus provenience, another challenge. As archaeologists, we constantly evaluate a site's provenience. Has a site been affected by agricultural activities, plowing, land modification, nearby construction, roads, structures, or natural processes such as erosion, mud flows, burrowing by animals? These processes can and do affect the provenience of any site. They compromise the ability of the site to provide credible information or accurate information by the mixing of the cultural materials and or by the destruction of them. The NPS uses integrity to mean, quote, the property has the ability to convey its historical associations or attributes. Now that's pretty close to our provenience. And truthfully, I think all of us from time to time substitute integrity for provenience in whatever we're writing. But the challenge comes with the 7 aspects of integrity: location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. A discussion of each of these must be placed in the National Historic Landmark. Otherwise, it comes right back. So I recall thinking, okay, location. The shelters are where they've always been. So they have integrity of location. The setting, well, most are well away from any urban place. And since the art or the deposits have always been in the shelter, the setting is intact. And so forth down the list. And by the time I got to association, that I had a clue. And I thought, yeah, each site is part of 4,000 years of a tradition. I'm not trying to make fun of the National Park Service. Those 7 aspects of integrity work quite well for the built environment, just not so well for shelters and their associated rock art. Nonetheless, after working with several of the partners and also some dedicated people at the NHL office regionally, we found a way to meet the requirement. The last one is discontiguous district. NPS determines the type of district for every NHL that's more than one property. Most are pretty easy to determine because they're historic age districts in close proximity to each other. So we were dismayed when we got this news from our regional office. They wanted it to be a discontiguous district. This type of district will require an overarching discussion of the district and its significance. Each site will then have its own NHL form, and each will have to meet the full level of significance. I objected to this requirement. There is no problem calling it discontiguous. That's what we've got. But and the district, this type of district, will require an overarching discussion of the district and its significance. So that part wasn't hard. My objection was that each site have its own NHL form and each meet the full level of significance. What that would require is filling out a form for each of the 35 sites, and those forms end up being 10 to 15 pages of data that would be repeated over and over and over. What would be the value? As it stands, our final nomination is about 82 pages. If we add the each site approach, the nomination would grow to be between 300 and 500 pages. Is that necessary? I asked the partners and they agreed with me. So we submitted our objection. It took some months for a response, but they finally came back agreeing to a discontiguous district with, quote, meaty, unquote, descriptions of the significance of each site in the document. Thank you. We won that one. As I said at the beginning, you have to have a strong, significant statement, and it's put at the front of the nomination. The one that I prepared is 6 pages long, so we're not going to go through anything more than just a little bit of it. And this particular paragraph I singled out because I think this is really the backbone of our significance. It isn't all about the sites and the deposits. It's not all about the art. It's that these two are 2 aspects of the people that live there. They're the ones who did the art, and they're the ones who created the artifacts and the features and the other things that are in the deposits. And as First and Robert Kelly and others have pointed out, hunter-gatherers carry their sacred beliefs with them in all activities. And David Whitley argued, dirt archaeological research desperately needs rock art if it is to develop a holistic understanding of pre-contact cultures. But rock art research also needs what the dirt archaeology can offer, because rock art is always contextualized by the material cultural record. So when what we put together with the 35 sites in the Canyonlands They represent effectively part of the national experience across 4,000 years of unbroken history. Not only is the PRS art one of the oldest dated pictograph styles in North America, a new method to date pictographs was developed and implemented using the organic binders in the PRS art at sites in the district, and now it is used worldwide. Thank you, Harry Schaefer, for asking Marvin Rowe if he wouldn't figure out a way to do the dating. And today, Marvin Rowe's student, Dr. Karen Steelman, is a chemist and the science director at Shumla. And Doctors Steelman, Carolyn Boyd, and Doug Daring have a recent article in Science Advances. It demonstrates that current known ages of the pictographs date from 4460 BC to 1500 AD. Now, during this long period, there are a number of changes in material culture, climate change, land use, and they've been documented time and again. So that all that change is going on, yet the art and its unique attributes persisted. They argue the murals follow a set of rules and an established iconographic vocabulary that transmitted a sophisticated metaphysics to unify the religious beliefs and rituals of the people across time. Waiting for Godot. The draft nomination went through multiple reviews, beginning with reviews from the partners, followed by reviews at multiple levels within the Park Service. Eventually, Jessica Hamlet, Amanda Castaneda, and I tied up loose ends and submitted the final to the NHL division in DC. That was in mid-2017. Some 8 months later, when we are now in 2018, Park Service told us they approved and they had sent the packet to the secretary. So then we waited and waited and waited. Remember those years, 2018, 2021? Well, 2018, when the secretary received it, was the time of lame ducks for whoever is in the current administration. And many of those people leave and go to the private sector. And that's what happened with the Secretary of Interior. So it was a long time. At some point in there was another secretary that was brought in, but that person didn't last very long either. So we kept waiting. And then COVID. Gee, that was a terrible thing. And hopefully we never go through that again. And then in early 2021, January 6th occurred. And it was horrible for the nation. Many things were brought to a halt because of that. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't be sure if that nomination that we all work so hard to have is ever going to be approved. And out of the blue, on January 13th, maybe the 13th is a good day, 2021, the acting secretary took the pile, because there was a pile, it wasn't just ours, a pile of pending NHLs that his staff had recommended for approval, sat down and signed them all. The Lower Pecos Canyonlands Archeological District had become a National Historic Landmark. And that, as they say, is history. Thank you all for being here. And if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Nancy, we do have a few here that I can read that came in while you were presenting. Um,
Okay,
from Anne, just wondering, a site on the National Register of Historic Places does not imply federal restrictions on what a private owner can do with the land. It can be sold, altered, or even demolished if the private owner so chooses. Is this not correct?
that's absolutely correct. It is honorific.
Okay. What are some of the cons of NHL inclusion?
The cost?
Some of the cons.
Oh, the cons. Some sites we don't know enough about, and so they left the group. I mean, we looked to see if there was enough data in the archives, particularly at Tarl, but elsewhere as well. And if we didn't have a real grasp of the contents, then we couldn't justify including it. Sometimes sites that we thought were really wonderful, in the interim, since no one had been back out to do more work at them, in the interim, looters had come in and had stripped the site apart. So that went out. Sometimes the sites are presumed to have an absolute date, and they have been spoken of in the literature as having date X, say 2500 BC. But they have no proof of it. There were never any radiocarbon dates run. There were few diagnostic artifacts that could tell you a real date. So those were real iffy and they went out. I think those were the main big points that we looked at.
Harry Schaefer had to leave, but he said, I'm curious as to why Heinz Cave was not considered.
It was considered. However, the artifacts from the collection at that time had not been prepared for collection. And it's an incredibly well excavated and very important site in the lower Pecos, but you can't really verify a lot of things. I think now it is curated. And like with National Register districts, there can be modifications made. You have to go back through the process, but the process is pretty simple once you already have an existing district if you want to add to it. So that I think might be one of the sites that should be considered to be added whenever the modifications happen.
Pansy said, amazing work, Nancy. Thank you. Waiting for Godot, subtitled A Tragic Comedy in Two Acts. The play explores existential themes like the search for meaning, the futility of hope, and the absurdity of human existence. So that he was commenting there on your reference.
Right.
Yeah. Patrick's
That's,
asking, oh, sorry, did you have something?
I was just going to say, that's great. Thank you very much.
Patrick asked, does the government of Mexico, Coahuila, have any similar type of recognition?
They do not at this time. We have talked, and I know that some people in Shumla, some of the staff, have talked with their INA institution, and we may, or Shumla may do some work with their permission in Mexico, looking to get them well enough documented that should a future consideration be to make this district a World Heritage District. That's been discussed, and we would want to partner with Mexico if we were to do that. So at this time, they do not have any special recognition, but there is communication about improving that situation.
Sandy said, thanks, Nancy. Amazing work by all of you. Grant says, thanks, Nancy. Good to see you.
I do have a comment for Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, this is Sam Kaysen from back in the
Oh,
geomarine
hi.
days.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say personally how good it is to see your face. And then overall, I'm so pleased to see this presentation that you've given us. And I just want to congratulate you and your colleagues at Shumla and the landowners too on this accomplishment. It seems like an incredibly big lift. I try to wrap my head around this idea of building a nomination for that cultural landscape, and it's just absolutely impressive. So congratulations, and thanks a lot for sharing the history of that accomplishment. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It was nice to hear from you, Tim.
We have one more comment here, it looks like, from Steve. Great to see you, Nancy. Been a quarter century since our expedition to the Bent Tent site on the Rio Bravo. This presentation really illustrates how much blood, sweat, and tears goes into a large team, and a large team is required. Many thanks for leading the charge, and congratulations to all of you.
Oh, congratulations to the sites. Just talk to people about this group of sites and this landscape. You're out and about with your friends, bring it up, encourage them to go down to Seminole Canyon. They would love it once they got there.
Thanks a lot, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you on a future Lunch and Learn session. Take care, everyone.